Welcome to welcome to Authentic Caregivers Community. And I'm so excited today because we have Angela DiCICCO, who has written, I'm hoping it comes out right, Better Than Before, and One Couple's Journey After a Tragic Accident. And I know you're going to love it. So grab a pen and paper because you are going to be encouraged and you'll want to take some notes. I know you will. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Here. I'm so glad you're here. Angela is a caregiver and author, and she's starting your second book is coming out.
I'm working on it. Don't know when it's coming out, but I'm working on it. I heard from people that there are gaps that they wanted to know. Fill in the gaps for us.
Yes. Good. Because I read your book. Yes. And she's an artist and different text. Oh my goodness. It's beautiful. And that's on your website also. And she's an advocate. Her website is the Italian Grandmama, theitaliangrandmama.com. theitaliangrandmama.com. And she also has dancing videos, and it's living with a paraplegic, and she comes from a small community Italian community in Philadelphia, and she lives in Annapolis now. She has 8 children. Together they have 8 children and 9 grandchildren. Oh my. Her goal is to educate others about living with a disability and also in marriage crisis. And she offers hope. Basically, that's what you'll hear today. A lot of hope today. June 11th, 2015, her life and her husband's life did a 180. And it's funny because my life did a 180 in June 4th of 2011.
Wow.
So, Angela, tell us a little bit about your background, your family, etc.
Well, first, I want to give you kudos for pronouncing my name correctly. It actually took my husband several years to wrap his tongue around DiCICCO. He's from Colorado, so
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, completely different culture. And yes, I grew up in a very small. It was Italian community. Everyone who lived there, in order to belong to our church, you actually had to have one parent who was Italian. And
oh wow, that's the kick. That's a kick.
Because this Italian community, everybody came over from Italy. Everybody sponsored each other. Everybody were paisans. They were friends. They were neighbors. They were brothers and sisters and relatives. And there was no church for them because this is when things were polarized. The Irish, and here's the Polish community, and here's the Italian community, and there was no church. So they built this national parish in Philadelphia. So I grew up. Yeah. It's a very unusual upbringing. It was idyllic in the sense of Aunt lived down the street. She'd give me a call. She'd say, I'm making pancakes Saturday morning. And I'm like, I am out of bed and I am there. Because my mother did not make breakfast. That was not a skill set.
Oh.
And, my grandfather was a few blocks over. It was just a really nice. I lived across the street from the church, and we were very involved in the church community. People were always dropping by our house. Sunday morning after Mass was always coffee and cake on the table and people coming and going. And so, that was the community that I grew up in. It was beautiful. And I got married, and my ex-husband, his job moved us to Maryland. And so we've been here since '86. We did eventually get divorced, but it's always been a loss for me that I left my family and I left my community. Some people can handle that really, really well. And but it's been hard for me that not just not having the support system, but not having that community, so in Maryland, I'm always like looking for my tribe. I've got a group of Italian friends, so we connect. In October, we do Italian American Month, and I'm part of the Sons and Daughters of Italy. And so yeah, always trying to find my tribe. But
Wow.
I have two older brothers. I am the youngest with all of the youngest and only child traits. Not feeling heard was one of them, not feeling like, what I had to say was really important. And I grew up with very loving parents, but an extremely strong mother who really took up all the emotions. So now I'm very passionate, I'm very emotional, but I wasn't not allowed to have that as a child. So part of my journey as an adult is to speak, have a voice, and and use it for good.
We have a lot in common. Okay. What was your most challenging childhood memory? Just off the cuff.
Challenging. Wow. I was lonely a lot. I felt like my brothers were never home. They were 3 and 4 years older than me. And I think being boys, they had a lot more freedom than I did. My mother kept me very close to home. And so I didn't have, I wasn't allowed, I was only allowed like up half the block. I wasn't allowed around the corner. I wasn't allowed across the street, And meanwhile, my brothers are like, down the street, around the block, over and under, and having this great time of their life. So, that was, one of the challenges really is always that loneliness that I had as a child, and always feeling like I wanted to be part of, a part of a community. As an adult, I realize I'm actually an introvert, and I know that's hard to believe. People do not believe that, but I am. And so as an adult, I realized that some alone time is exactly what I needed. But I think that, I probably had more than I needed as a child. So that balance for me of having people in my life, but then having my alone time.
Yes. I would be described as an extrovert also by almost everyone I know, but I recharge alone.
Yes.
And I can get over. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And the things that I'm doing now, being an artist and being an author, those are solitary things. You cannot do them in community. I get up in the morning, 6:30, multiple times during the week, and I paint. That's my time to paint. So
how lovely that you have that creative part.
It saved me. It saved me.
It would feed your soul, really.
100%.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It feeds
What was
my
your
soul.
most? Go ahead.
Oh, it's an outlet also for what I live with on a daily basis. Art is an outlet for it. I can be happy, joyful, angry, irritated, and just put it all out there.
I love it. What's a great childhood memory? You said something about
just being around my whole Italian family. Holidays were holidays, 4th of July, Memorial Day, and I still feel those losses because we don't have that, and my kids weren't raised with that, and so they're it's not been recreated. So all of those holidays, and I tell people this, when I moved to Maryland and I was invited to 4th of July, people had hot dogs and hamburgers, and I would say, where's the rest of the food? So at our Italian gatherings, we had eggplant parmesan, like in the 4th of July outside. We would have, stuffed shells. We would have the hamburgers and hot dogs, but, they were just incidental. The turkey was incidental on Thanksgiving to the cavatelles, So those are the memories that I grew up with, was just being around food and family. And Christmas Eve was the Feast of the Seven Fishes. So that was a beautiful tradition that we continued, where in the Italian culture, Christmas Eve is a bigger deal than Christmas Day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. What led you to Arthur? This is your current husband for how many years now?
We've been married 12 and a half years.
Wow. So what led you to Arthur?
So after my divorce, I knew that I wanted to get into a relationship again, but, I had to heal myself. I had to do a lot of my own healing. And when I turned 50, I was at the birthday party of a 50th birthday party. We were the same age. And Arthur was there. And after that, uh, and Arthur came up. There was this whole group of table. I was collecting all the money, and this very nice, well-dressed man came over to me and he said, "Do you have enough money?" And I just thought that was the sweetest thing. Here I am collecting from 15 people, and I have to make sure that, the bill is covered and the tip is covered. And he
Mhm.
was the only one that came over. So afterwards, this mutual friend said, "Well, how about you and Arthur, getting together?" So she gave him my phone number, and we talked and we dated, and one thing led to another. And we decided, well, we're going to do this. I wasn't sure I wanted to get married again. It's
Yeah.
different being married older. It's a different journey than when you're getting married in your 20s and you're starting out together. It's a really
Mhm.
different journey.
Yeah. Wow.
So
And so
that's
how
what
long,
led us.
yes, how long were you married before the injury?
Oh, 5 years. Just 5 years.
That's
Yeah.
very long.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
not at all.
Uh,
It was the eve of our 5th wedding anniversary that his accident happened. Yeah.
that's right. You were
Yeah.
packing and going somewhere, I think, in your
That's
book you
right.
talked about.
That's
Wow.
right. That's right.
And so, what was Arthur like? Because tell us about Arthur a little bit. He's a paraplegic,
Yes,
which
he's a
has,
paraplegic. He's a complete, what they call a complete paraplegic. He severed his spine at the T11. He
11. Okay.
has no feeling below his belly button.
Yeah.
Thankfully, everything above his belly button is fully functional, so he has use of his arms. Yeah, which is such a blessing. When you have a tragedy like this, what you start to do is you look for those blessings wherever they are. Yes, Arthur's a paraplegic, but it could be worse. He could be a quadriplegic. He could, it could be worse. So he has full function above his belly button. And prior to the accident, Arthur was the Energizer Bunny. He never sat still. In fact, he did not even want to. I would say, "Come sit next to me on the sofa and let's watch TV together." And he would be like, "That's not quality time. I don't want to sit still." He was always on the move. He was helping all the neighbors, all the widowers. He would clean off their cars when it snowed. He was of service. That was what he did.
Uh,
His motto was service. So he was always helping other people and his church. And so much so that sometimes we would get into it because I'd be like, "Yeah, but there's things here at home that I'd like him to do." But he was about
yeah.
really helping the community. So when the
Are you
accident
both
happened,
uh, are you both Christian Catholic? You shared that?
yes, I am. He is not. He has
Oh,
a higher power. He has a higher power
okay.
whom he calls God. But we do have different
Thanks.
faiths. Yeah, different faiths.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And honestly,
And
one of my prayers was, "God, please send me someone who is spiritual that I can share my spiritual life with," because that was really important to me. And we
Mhm.
do have a spiritual life together.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Um, so what are the most challenges, I guess, for you and in your opinion for Arthur, after the injury?
Well,
And you didn't want him to ride motorcycles, correct?
say it again.
You didn't want him to ride motorcycles even because his accident was in motorcycles, correct? Motorcycle.
Yeah, I actually love riding, and we both miss riding. We really do. It's not that I didn't want him to ride that. I did not want that particular motorcycle was not something he should have been riding at his age. It was
Gotcha.
too big and too powerful. And we were not at a good place in our relationship. 2014 was a really bad year for us. So we kind of went into the accident, not having a really great relationship. And the going on vacation for our anniversary was sort of to help, let's remember what we love about each other, because we do. We love each other so deeply.
Yes.
Let's remember what we love about each other. So part of the challenge after the accident was, well, for him, the challenge was he never thought he would be independent again. He thought he would live the rest of his life institutionalized. And
Oh,
that was contrary to everything I had heard from other people, from paraplegics, from the groups, from the support groups, but somehow he just had it in his head that he was never going to be independent again. And one of my challenges, the biggest challenge, was when he was on drugs. He was crazy. Drugs gave him a very poor decision-making skill set, and he made some
what was
really, yeah,
traumatic stuff? So
yes.
would you share what the drugs were? What was the combination? Because that's other people take, nerve pain stuff and etc. Just didn't go.
The morphine drip was the first thing that he had in the hospital. Yeah. And that was very quickly, within 2 or 3 days, we saw a difference. And the first thing were the hallucinations that he had, which no one told me about. No one told us that this could be a possible side effect. So we were both floored by that. And then he was also on Oxycontin and oxycodone for the pain. And those were the drugs that really started to make him erratic, have really poor decision-making skills, and
Wow.
pretty much do whatever he could to push me away. Something happened in his brain, and he decided that I was the enemy, and I was trying to steal all of his money. So he took my name off of all of his bank accounts, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? So that was
Wow.
yeah, that was one of the biggest
Yeah.
challenges. And I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure our marriage would make it, which I understand. After tragedy like this, a lot of marriages do not make it. A lot of relationships don't make it, and for obvious reasons, right? But here I am, a wife who was willing to show up. And
Mhm.
at what point he actually asked me for a separation. So
Was he in the hospital at that point or
he was,
institutionalized?
yeah, he was
Oh
in the
my God.
hospital. I know. He was
Wow.
just crazy. So
Okay, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was kind of stunned by that he went towards, well, making his life happen, really, I think was the goal. And he went back to bringing an ex-wife in, and his daughter, it's in the book, his daughter wasn't exactly your friend. And like, did those relationship, not that one, but the daughter, ever heal more? Or, that would be hard to get over. Like,
Yes.
they cut you out.
Yeah. And it really takes a decision to you have to choose to let go or choose to heal that. And there was a point, that she came out again, and we talked a little bit, and we talked about, okay, we're going to erase this and start over. Now, honestly, the Italian part of me knows how to hold a grudge like forever. So
Yeah.
so there's a part of all of this that every day I have to forgive him. Every day I have to forgive people that hurt me in those situations. And but
Mhm.
I don't get to see his daughter very much. So has it's healed enough so that I can be she can come out and visit us, and we can, spend the day together, and it will be very pleasant. So it's healed
Mhm.
enough. I never really got to, talk to her about what happened or how I felt or anything like that.
Oh, God.
Um,
Mm.
all the
Yeah.
names, all of the names of his kids are changed in the book. The names of his ex-wives, they're all, it's the only thing I changed were all of his kids' names.
Which was
And
gracious of you. Yes.
I
Wow.
actually, he knows that it does not set his family in a very good light. He is aware of that. And I
Well,
did.
it's reality.
God bless him for allowing me to write this book and for continuing to support me. And he did tell me after his brain fog cleared and we moved in together, he said, my amends to you is a living amends. And so he held me when I cried, and he held me when I raged. I was so angry, and
Yes.
he allowed me to write this book. And as I
Wow.
was writing it, which the book is from the caregiver's point of view, so many books are from the patient's point of view, right? But
Yes.
this is from the caregivers, because we have a side of the story. You know,
Yes.
people don't
Huge.
understand the huge side of the story, because the tragedy didn't just happen to the patient. It happens to the family.
Correct. Correct. And so often that's not recognized, even in rehab places. And when I even go out, people are constantly asking about him. And I don't mind that, of course, but it's fascinating to me. And it took a while. I don't know if with Arthur, but it took a while for him to acknowledge that it also happened to all of us. And we have our story.
You know, the book helped with that, because I gave Arthur each chapter to read. And as I was doing it, he's also an amazing writer. And so I would give it to him to, like, you know, edit and review. But in reading it, he was learning. And there was a
Wow.
point at which he looked at this chapter and he put it down on the table, and he looked at me and he said, I had no idea what you were going through.
Mhm.
And that
I
was a
think
very
that's,
healing moment.
yes, they're all, yeah, well, we've had those moments too, but they're all consumed almost by what has
Yes,
happened, which I
it's
would have been
normal.
too. Yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
it's normal and it's natural, you know, but he had no idea. I was driving an hour to an hour and a half one way to visit him every day. You know, there were days I was so exhausted. I would
Yes.
crawl in his bed to take a nap before I drove home, because there was no way I would have made it home safely.
I bet. I can't even imagine having to drive an hour and a half one
It was
way. Yeah.
it was exhausting, and my mother was still living with me. So I had to, you know, continue.
That was stunning to me. I'm like, oh my goodness. Not only that, but you had your mother with you at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And so what made you, I was shocked when I read at the end of towards the end, that you had moved in together. You bought a place even together. And I was just amazed at the healing that must have taken place. You had talked about, you wanted him to have, was it dignity and independence
Mhm.
when you moved? That was an interesting goal. How did you come up with that? I mean, and where was your relationship at that point?
I watched him lose a lot of dignity, and others in hospitals, and they don't mean to, but you know, his covers are being thrown back, and you know, he has no clothes on, and you know, they pull the curtain around, but you know, there was no dignity to having these things done that needed to be taken care of, or dignity in the fact that he would have to wait for hours to get a Hoyer to get lifted out of bed, or wait for water when he was so dry and there was nobody to bring him water, or
Mhm.
there was a
Wow.
loss. There's a loss of dignity. You don't, you know, you don't have a voice. That the time in the one of his rehabs where he opened his mouth and had a voice, they actually had a show of force. And I don't know if you know what that is, where everybody on the staff, from the head of the department, all of the people that were on your team, the social worker, everybody shows up. They don't announce themselves. They surprise you. and it's called a show of force, and they're strong arming you into being compliant. And they were saying, well, we're not really
Ah,
sure that you're right for our program. And they were right, but not for the reasons
oh.
that they thought. They were insisting that a man who had a broken back, broken ribs, bone contusions, and a torn rotator cuff and a concussion do 3 hours of OT at PT a
Oh,
day.
rotator
I'm
cuff alone disables you. My
I
husband
mean,
had
any
that.
one of
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
there was a lot of
Wow.
loss of dignity and loss of
Yeah.
independence. Like I said, he was one of the most independent people that I knew. I couldn't
Uh,
even, he was so used to taking care of himself, and he had been alone for so many years that, Christmas would be coming in November, and he would say, oh, I really want a foot massager. And I'd say, oh, great, that's a great Christmas gift. And before I know it, he would be bringing it home. He would buy it for himself.
yes. Yeah. Mhm.
That's how
Yeah.
independent he was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to see him so humbled and to see him so helpless, it really broke my heart. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
and the other piece of it that I have to touch on is, because everybody says that, why are you still with him? If you read the book, you are going to want to hit him on the head. So the book reads like a novel. Right? Am I right,
Yeah.
Kay? Like, did you not
Yes.
want to hit him on the head?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well,
And
yes. And it's selling your home. And I'm like, oh, over. I'm done. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
On your own. Yeah.
On my own, yeah. When he decided we needed a separation and he wasn't moving back home, I decided to sell the big house, which put a whole lot of other things in motion that I wished had not been set in motion. But
Yeah.
but
It
if
is
he
what it
was
is.
coming,
Yeah.
if he was coming back, I lived in a 5-level split. Okay,
Oh,
5 levels.
yeah. No.
There
Yeah.
is nowhere for a man in a wheelchair to be. So,
No. No.
but the reason that I stayed, because he gave me every reason to walk away, and I prayed about it constantly. And I did stay away from the hospital, and I did consider leaving. I did consider walking away. What we always had was this tremendous, tremendous love. Like, we love each other so much, with such a beautiful, deep, I want to say passion, because we have that, but such a deep love, and that never went away. And then I just prayed, I would say, God, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to walk away? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
My brother said, well, God's not going to tell you to leave him. And I said, well, then he better tell me to stay, because
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in one of my prayers, I kept hearing God say, you need to stay. Why, God? Because if you stay, it's going to be better than it was before. And that was God's
Wow.
promise to me. That was his promise. If you stay, it will be better than it was before. And
there's your book. Better
that's
than
the
before.
better. That's
Wow.
the title of the book, Better Than Before.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have challenges, but
Well,
but
and every marriage does, but it's different challenges. I've had people say, other women, oh yeah, we have that same. Okay, no, no, you really don't, unless you're living it. It's totally different than. Do you ever have, and you work outside the home?
3 days a week,
part-time.
3 days, just 18 hours.
Yeah. Do you ever have the feeling of, you watch other people and their lives are going, if you do any social media, they're acting like they're living the dream, right? And
Yes.
so sometimes that is really hard, because you know how it could have been. Do you ever have that, or no?
Every day.
Okay.
Every day. It's one of,
Yeah.
and in the businesses that you and I are in, you're on social media. You have no choice but to be on social media, right? So it's not like I can say, I'm never going to do Facebook. I'm not going to do Instagram. I don't want to know what the rest of the world is doing. you're on it because you're posting, right? I try not to look at other people's feeds because yes, at this
I
point,
agree.
people my age are retired, their houses are paid off, they're taking cruises. They do appear to be
Yes.
cruises, right? They do appear to be. My friends
Yeah.
are going hither and yon, and oh, I just came back from Florida, and I have to tell you, one of the things I really struggle with is being jealous. You know, I feel really jealous
Mhm.
of people that can do that. You know, I feel jealous, first of all, that they have the ease of doing that. You and I both know we cannot hop in the car and do anything. There is no hopping in the
Mhm.
car. There is no, my husband and I are trying to plan a trip
No.
to North Carolina. And it's like, you don't just hit the road and say, let's just stop in a cute little hotel. Everything
Right.
has to be planned. Everything
Yeah.
has to be planned. So
And the
yeah.
packing and
And
yeah.
oh, we went on one trip. I got to tell you this. We went on one trip, and of course, I'm packing the whole van, right? That's what we do because we're the caregivers.
Yeah.
So everything, I'm putting it all into the van. Get everything in the van. We went to the beach, went to the beach. I unpacked everything. Arthur said, "Where's my box?" Now, what are you talking about? He said, "I put a box in the kitchen where the bags were." I said, "I don't have a box. Did you tell me there was a box? Did you say, Angela, this box goes with us? Did you like put it on top of the suitcases?" Like, there was no box. And in that box was all of the supplies that he needs, all his catheters,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
his diapers, his wipes, his gels, his all of the
Mhm.
things you need
Oh
as a
my.
everything. So I am here to tell you that you can figure anything out. You can figure anything out. And
Yes.
so, you know, we figured it out. You know, we always have a bag. He always has on the back of his chair. I don't know if you do this. We always have a bag that has
Yes.
extra supplies in. We always have
Yes.
extra things thrown in the car. So, you
Hmm.
know, I
Yep.
gathered up everything and, you know, we made it work. We made it work. But
Yes.
that's
That's awesome.
not
But it's
not
work.
an idea.
Yeah. 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 How do you create intimacy in your marriage? Just on a daily level. I'm not
Um,
asking about thing. I'm asking about how
right.
do you have intimacy, really? Yeah.
You know, again, this is one of the blessings. This is one of the connections that Arthur and I have. We, from the very beginning of our dating life, have been touchy feely. Like we are connected on a physical level. So if I am sitting next to him, this is before the accident, we would be knee to knee. You know, we
Mhm.
would be holding hands. And he told me, I said, "You're so affectionate. Like you just, I just kind of melt into his arms." And he said, "I wasn't like this before you. Like you brought this out in me,"
Oh, how
which is
lovely.
amazing to me because he is incredibly affectionate. You know, one of the things that I miss, and I know you'll appreciate this, I'm little. I'm only 4'9". Like I'm really little.
I know.
so he was average 5'8", 5'9". So he would come
Mhm.
into work and I would step up a couple of steps into in our living room so that I could like hug him and we could be like face to face and I could hug him. And it's one of the things that I missed is that he can't stand and I can't walk into his arms. He
Mhm.
thankfully again because he has feeling above, he can give me a hug. So how do we do that every day?
Uh-huh.
I literally every single evening fall asleep in his arms. Every single night. He opens
I
his
love it.
arms and
Wow.
I curl into that little crook and I fall asleep. And so
Wow.
that has kept
What
us.
a
It is a gift. It is 100% a gift. And
Mhm.
Arthur reminded me that even when we are really angry with each other and we're really at a not a good place, during the night, he'll reach out and touch me. We will
That's
connect
lovely. Mhm.
physically.
That's
And
lovely. That's lovely. Does Arthur drive?
he does. It was one of my goals. independence for him. And one of the ways that his daughter did not support, she said, I'm worried about him.
Oh,
I'm really worried about him getting his license, this accident, he was in other accidents. And God gave me the grace to hear her and say, well, do you have other suggestions? But the truth of it is, she lives in Colorado. I live in Maryland. So unless
right.
you're offering to drive him to the doctors and to the hospital and to dinner when we go out, unless you're offering to break down his wheelchair and put it back together again, I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound nasty at all, but unless you are offering me a solution, you don't get to have an opinion about this. You don't get to influence this decision.
Yes, and accidents happen anywhere. I mean, you could happen in the home. Phil was next to a gal who she had tripped over her luggage, spinal cord. You're like, what? That isn't even a good story.
No, right. That isn't
Yeah.
even a good story.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And unless you're living it every day, you don't understand. You
No.
don't understand. And I was getting worn down with the caregiving of putting him in. I had a Prius, how tiny Priuses are, and I'm taking the wheelchair, and shoving the wheelchair in, taking it apart, putting it together, every single time, in and out. And I was getting really worn down, and I
Yes.
always try to stay ahead of the resentment, because I think it's easy to go into resentment, things that we are asked to do every single day,
Yes. Yeah.
It's,
I think I don't have resentment. It's exhaustion often. It's just,
that too.
you
That
pack the
too.
car, like, oh,
I'm ready for a
stay up.
nap now. I'm ready for a nap. I packed the car. Can I go take a nap? So one of the gifts of him being able to drive, and it was an ordeal, and it's expensive. I don't think people realize how expensive it is to have these spinal cord injuries, because Medicare or your health insurance does not cover all of it. They don't cover the gloves. They don't cover the wipes. They don't cover the diapers or the bed pads or the many, many things they do not cover. Baby wipes, right? They don't cover that. But so there was an expense to getting his license again, but it opened up this world for us. So he can go food shopping, right? I taught him that too. Put a basket on your lap. He would say, I can't go food shopping. And I would say, get somebody to help you. Learn to ask for help.
They will. They'll even load it in the car.
Exactly. And that was something he needed to learn. We are able to go on these trips because I don't have to both pack the car and drive the 4 hours to the beach. He does his part by driving. So it's really opened up a world for us. It's been a lifesaver.
Yes. That's awesome. Well, when we go to the beach, we're only an hour from the beach, but I don't go for one day or one night because of the time it takes. I need to settle in a little bit. I can't do the overnight, load it all up again. It just doesn't work for us, which is, but it's good that we've learned it. And that I speak for myself, self-care, really. Yeah.
Well, and
so
that's really important too. Self-care.
Yeah. Yes, it's huge. Does Arthur have male friends that come by and relationships like that, or what have you found?
We are very blessed. We have an amazing support system. I would not have made it through. Neither one of us would have made it through without the support system, especially in those early months. Like, friends crawled out of the woodwork. Now, I did my part in asking. I asked for help, and I talk about it in the book, how one friend brought us, me and my mom, a meal every Wednesday because I wasn't eating, I wasn't cooking. Every Wednesday, I knew I had a home cooked meal. We have amazing friends. And when we just moved to Annapolis, which is about 45 minutes, an hour away from our friends. So it's not, people are, they're not going to drive up here and drop by like they used to. But before we moved here, yes, he would have friends come over. He had a friend who's it does physical therapy, and his friend would come over just gratis, just like, hey, let me work with you. Let me work with you, Arthur. Arthur's not, and I think you might have mentioned this, Arthur's not motivated to do this stuff on his own. He's not motivated. You have to keep up with your strength exercises, but when his friend came over, so yes, he has his friends, I have my friends, we have couples friends. We have a very rich life. We really do.
That's awesome. Did anybody disappear that you feel like disappeared during that time? Possibly. I'm not asking for names. I'm just
No, right. And that's another thing. I see this on the Facebook groups that I'm on. I'm on several spinal cord injury groups, and I see this over and over again. And once again, we are incredibly blessed that now we did have friends who could not go to the hospital to visit Arthur. They simply could not see him that way. But they didn't abandon us. One of my friends, the one that introduced us, she said, I cannot visit Arthur. However, how about if I take a day and spend the day with your mother? So she supported me that way.
love it.
Yes.
So practical. What she
Very
could give.
practical, right?
Yes.
I had a friend, my best friend, who unfortunately has since, one of my best friends, she's passed on. But she called me up, and this was in the book too. She called me up. She came down from New Jersey. I live in Maryland. She spent 3 days with me, peeling wallpaper off the wall and painting one of the bedrooms to get ready for me to sell the house. I was working. She was painting my bedroom.
That's beautiful.
Yes, I was so blessed. So I didn't really feel, I would say, the most surprising to me was that his church did not show up for him. That surprised me. I really did expect, for all that he put into that church, that more people would have shown up for him. But other than that, I would say that we were pretty gosh darn blessed.
Which really says about the people. It isn't about Arthur or anything. It's just that, it says more about the other people than it does what we're going through, or what you guys are going through. So on page 116 and 119 in your book, your neighbor stomped on your boundaries.
Oh my gosh, could you even believe that happened?
I was shocked. Tell them just real quick what that was. Oh my goodness.
So one of the things that I was told by other people in the hospital was, keep the credit cards out of your husband's hand. Do not let him get credit cards, right? So easy to do. He's an hour and a half away. I've got his wallet. Well, he started asking for his wallet. I need my credit cards. What do you need your credit cards for? What are you buying? Like, what do you need? I need my credit cards. I refused. And people love Arthur so much. It was one of the issues that I had, was that people loved him so much that they were falling over backwards and forwards trying to help him. What they didn't realize is that their help was actually hurting me and hurting our relationship and hurting what I was trying to accomplish, right? So they're trying, so in this instance, I refused. So this neighbor, Arthur called the neighbor, and the neighbor ran over and she said, Arthur asked me if I could bring up his credit cards. Drive to Baltimore, an hour and a half away. I said, oh, absolutely not. He cannot have his credit cards. Are you sure I can't go in and get them? I said, no. I went away for the day. I came back. I walked into my bedroom, and if you've ever had the experience of knowing something is amiss, you don't know what it is, but I walked into this room, and this is like, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is. And I don't know what made me go over and look at his bookcase. His wallet was gone. I called him up, and he told me, yes, I called the neighbor, and I asked her to get my credit cards.
And you
And
had told her,
I had told her no. And she convinced my mother to open the door and let her in. And my mother, to her, God bless her, she said, Angela, I kept telling her to leave. Now, my mother had dementia at the time, early dementia.
right.
But
Yeah.
she knew enough that this woman did not belong in this house. And this woman went into my bedroom, invaded my personal space to bring my
Wow.
husband credit cards. And then, of course, then that just created more chaos, you know. To her credit, when I called her the next day, she literally picked up the phone. I mean, I'm all ready to like blast her, and she picks up the phone. She said, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I crossed a boundary and I am so sorry. So to her credit, she
To her
immediately,
credit. Okay.
to her, but
Yeah.
you know, the damage was done. He had credit cards in his hand, and that created a whole other bad situation with him being on drugs. So
Wow. And then on page 136, you talked about Caring Bridge, which I found very
yes,
useful. But
yes.
someone else was allowed to be an admin also. So surprise. And that would just you have a lot of grace about you, because that would be a tough boundary thing.
It
I
was.
mean,
It was only by the grace of God. Honestly, the only reason that I have been able to forgive and move past to the degree that I have, because like
yeah.
I said, it's a daily thing for me. And the only reason that Arthur and I are together is by the grace of God. You know, God gives me grace every day to deal with these feelings and these situations. And
Mhm.
you know, he gave me grace to deal with that. Now, I had to set up really strong boundaries. I told him, I said, you are never allowed to even say that word, that name is never even allowed to come across your lips. She
Yeah.
is never allowed in my home. If she shows up on my front door, she will not be allowed. I will not welcome her.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really strong boundaries, you know, around that. And that was the only way that we could get through that. And here's the other piece of it. When he was finally off the drugs, he could see what he had done. And he said, I will make amends to you for this. And he has continued to do that.
So it's been
That's
reliable. You can count on that, and you're on the same page then, really, of him respecting your boundaries.
100%. Well, he knows. I mean, he knows. And
Yeah.
and like I said, I'm really clear. I'm East Coast. I'm from Philadelphia. I can be very bottom line. And I just said, look,
I can too. Yes.
you see my back? That's what
Yeah.
you will see. That's what you will see. You will not get a second chance, sir. You will not get a second
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. Good. That's healthy. I love it. Let's see. I have a question. What is core energetics? You mentioned it as a resource in the back of your, she has tons of resources in the back of her book. So it's
Yes,
available on.
that was my editor's suggestion that I do that, which I think was an amazing suggestion. And because it's something I would have wanted when I was in rehab. They hit me a 4-inch book. They're like, here's resources for you.
Yes, they do.
Are you
Yes.
kidding me? Right? Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Give me 10, right? Could you just like give me 10? Like, could you just give me a few? Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. I didn't even have help picking a rehab. I don't know if you did, but I did not. That's a whole other story in the book about how I had no help. I did not have a social worker. I had no help. But
wow.
what was your question again? Oh, core energetics.
Mhm.
I highly recommend it. It turned out that a classmate of mine did this. And when I'm going through this and I'm dealing with ex-wives who my husband kept calling, we didn't really talk about that, but in his drug-induced state, my husband decided
Right.
that his ex-wife would be a good person, would be a good resource for him. And we can laugh about it now, right? And it makes for
Right.
such good drama. Can you not see this being a feature film? Can you not see this story being a movie?
Completely.
All the drama. I just don't
Completely.
know who I want to play me yet. I haven't figured out who I want to play
Yeah.
me. But so core energetics is, it's body, mind, spirit, movement. So probably for about the first 20 minutes, she would say, what's going on with you? And I would tell them about the ex-wife, and this is what she's doing, and this is what she's going, and this is what he's doing. Da, 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 da. And so she would say things to me. You know, I don't curse a lot, right? But she would say things to me like, I want you to do the waterfall. I don't know if you know what that is. That's turning upside down and letting your hands in your head and everything just kind of shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. So that was one of the things where she would say, I want you to stomp your feet, and I want you to curse at her, and I want you to scream at her, and I want you, you know, to do all the things that you can't do in polite
Mhm.
society, right?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so she would give me these exercises
You got a frozen screen.
to do that would
Right.
release a physical release for me. It was an emotion. I think this is a yoga thing. You do the cat, you lay on your back and you put your arms and your legs up like that. And all of the energy, you know, comes out. So she gave me ways to take some of that steam
I
off
love
so that I could go back and
Yeah,
do it all over again the next day. Absolutely was a
that
lifesaver for me. It wasn't just talk therapy. It was I do recommend it. I really do.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. What philosophy do you live by? Just personally.
You know, I asked my husband this because nothing immediately came to mind. You know, fun, that used to be my, oh, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it. You know, well, you and I wouldn't be living the lives we are if that was, you know, every day is not fun. But what he said, let's see, was time is precious. Time is precious. And that is the philosophy that I live life by. And it was one of the things we were not on the same page. I lost my dad when he was 69 years old. My grandmother died at 67, and two of my aunts died in their 60s. I understood at a really young age, like in my
Yeah.
30s, how precious life is. One of my neighbors retired and immediately got sick and died. So at a really young age, I got the correlation that time is precious, life is precious. And, you know, Arthur hadn't learned that lesson. So I'm trying to cram as much life in as I can. And he's saying, we got plenty of time. We got plenty of time. Until we didn't, until
Yeah.
the accident happened. And so
Mhm.
part of what I've had to work through are some resentments that I had about our differences in philosophy, you know, at the time. For example, camping. I love to camp. He didn't want to camp. And now he says, I really regret not going camping with you. You know, I said, I wanted to, like,
Mhm.
you know, be with you under the stars, you know, like I wanted to have this romantic. And people tell me all the time, but you can still do that. You can still, okay, you know what? Unless you're talking
Yeah.
to me from a point of view of a spinal cord injury person, please don't talk to me about how I can still go camping.
I hear you. Right? Oh my goodness.
So yes, time is
Yeah.
precious, and I try to cram in as much as I can every day. I try to live as much life as I can because time is precious and life is short.
Very short. That's true. That's how I feel. Um, it's very precious. And you don't get overs on that. Tell me five. We're gonna wrap a little bit. What's your favorite Bible verse?
You know, I have multiple Bible verses that I like. One I have this mug, and it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding," from Proverbs 3:5. And I noticed that you had a verse from Philippians. I love many verses from Philippians, but one of my favorites is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
I said that this morning when I got up.
Yes, you did.
It gets me
It gets you
going.
going, right?
Yeah.
Because how else do we get through the day without the strength of something greater than ourselves? I couldn't do this on my own.
No, nor would I want to. No. Um, let's see. Where do you see yourself? Oh no, what I want to do is what are the 5 caregiving tips that you have for others?
Um, If you're a caregiver, if you're a paid caregiver, then my biggest tip is to treat your person like a person. One of the things that we found in the hospital and in the rehabs was he was a patient, and not going back to dignity. He wasn't always seen as a
Yeah.
person. And I would
Wow.
say to him, you have to make yourself a person. You have to, tell them what the consequences of their actions if they don't do this or they do this. So if treat them like a person.
Okay.
If you're a spouse or you're a caregiver of a loved one, my most important tip is to take care of yourself. Figure out ways to take. I hear a lot of people saying they feel guilty, going and getting a manicure or pedicure. I feel guilty, going on vacation. I feel guilty leaving him to go out with my friends. That was a choice that I had to make. Am I going to stay here with him all the time, or am I going to continue to have a life outside of this, our relationship? And with his blessing, I decided that for my mental health, and so I go out with friends, I go dancing, whatever it means to you to take care of yourself. Read.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 3 is to set boundaries with this person. And one of the boundaries that I had to set, because, I'm not a paid caregiver, I am your wife, right? So let's please remember this. I had to set a boundary at after 10 o'clock at night, you may not ask me for anything. So
Beautiful.
get it all out. Get it all out before 10 o'clock at night. Make your list.
Good one.
And that has been a life. Now, if it's an emergency, of course I will do it. But things like, well, I forgot, I'm hungry. Can you get me an Oreo cookie? Nope. No, I cannot. But I will put nuts in a container for you to keep next to your bed next time.
Yes. Yeah.
Number 4, set time limits. What do I mean by this? Set time limits. I'm not really sure what I meant by that, but there must be something. Oh, maybe it was the 10 p.m. thing. And setting boundaries. Oh, the 10 p.m. thing is set a time thing. And setting is just figuring out what works for me and what wasn't, what I'm willing to do for him and what I am not willing to do for him. What I'm willing to do, like, I got tired of driving him around, so I encouraged him to get his license. I hear people say all the time, in the spinal cord injury, he won't get this surgery that will mean that I won't have to cath him all the time. Well, why does he get to be the only one that has a say about that? You're the one that is cathing him. You're the one that's doing his bowel program. Why don't you get to have a say? So, I encourage people to think about their own needs and set boundaries about that. And I think that I got up to 4.
Great. Those are great because they're deep ones. I mean, that'd keep anybody busy with paid caregiver, treating them, like a person, and spouse, self-care, mental health. I know you paint, your art, I'm sure helps some, going and seeing friends, etc. And sometimes you take vacations. And to kind of recharge, my son had said one time, he says, will you be better when you come back? And I said, definitely.
100%.
You have that clarity. I do, when I go away. Yeah. And to set time limits, like, and the boundaries, set boundaries, time limits. I love the after 10 p.m. That's hysterical. That's good. That's a definite self-care. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's tons of resources in her book. I know you'll love it. You'll love it. I couldn't put it down once I started. So
thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much for joining us, Angela. I appreciate it. And God's peace to you. And be sure and pass on our love from our heart to Arthur and what he's living. And how kind he is to you. I love that.
Yeah. We just want to be an example to others and give everybody else hope. There's life after spinal cord injury, And
Yes.
there's hope for marriage challenges for sure.
Yes. Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so
See you
much.
next time. Okay. Bye-bye.